Hello, this is Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull calling to do an interview.
My first question I want to ask is, your new brilliant release, Homo Erraticus, came out very shortly after Thick as a Brick Part 2. How were you able to follow it up so quickly, and why did you put out a new release so quickly?
Well, when you say very shortly after, I mean, it's a period of 2 years, and if I'm being energetic, then in years gone by, we came out with a new album every year. So, a 2-year gap, allowing for touring twice around the world, is probably not such a huge and tall order if you can buckle down to working on it and delivering it in a finite period of time. So I actually started work on this one on the 1st of January 2013, and we recorded it at the end of 2013. In fact, into January 2014, but it was all written essentially by the end of January, more than a year ago, and so by that definition, I'm here this year doing a series of tours, which will go on into 2015, but probably 9 a.m. on January the 1st in 2015, you may well find me sitting down with my guitar and my flute working on a new project that could be scheduled for release in 2016. So yeah, a 2-year cycle is probably sensible for me at this point in my life.
Yeah, well, I find that really fascinating because you could have toured for Thick as a Brick 2 for the next 5 years and easily,
Well, I think we probably, we did 2 years of it, and it was great fun, and we have a few more of those shows, actually with Thick as a Brick to do in Australia and New Zealand at the end of this year, but which I'm looking forward to doing again after a whole year of not doing it. But I think we have to remember that old bands, and new music are not the sort of the audience demand. If the Rolling Stones were to release a new album tomorrow, people would greet it with a polite yawn and go and buy Exile on Main Street or something, because the reality is that, frankly, nobody wants a new Rolling Stones album. People want a new old Rolling Stones album. In other words, they're looking for something that is impossible to deliver, which is the style, the content, of that original material, somehow cloned but yet different, is an impossibility. So the Stones wisely are not releasing a new album, and Led Zeppelin are not reforming or putting out a new album, and to prove that the opposite can be done, David Bowie, after a long absence, did put out a new album. But as far as I know, he's not on tour. He seems to have suffered some health problems in recent years and isn't really kind of out there doing anything, which is a shame, because I think he's just about the same age as I am.
Yes.
And but clearly not been maybe quite as lucky in terms of his physical health. I don't know. But then I could drop dead tomorrow. No,
you can't do that.
No, I can't, because I'm supposed to be in London playing 2 shows. No, you're quite right. It's absolutely not on. It can't be allowed.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to know what motivates you to do this to yourself. I mean, your CDs, especially the new one, the last one, I mean, they are so musically complicated, and as all your work is. Are you doing this? I mean, you're an established artist. A lot of artists that never really made it are the artists that later in their career are really motivated to finally try to make it. But you've accomplished so much. I mean, what is your motivating factor to continue this?
Well, as your ex-president Kennedy said, when he took office, he said, or shortly after, he said, we choose to do these things like go to the moon, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. I think I'm quoting word for word. And that is a philosophy, is a very good one. There's little point in patting yourself on the back or going through life with a sense of accomplishment if you never actually do anything difficult. And so, for me, it is about, especially as I get older, doing the difficult stuff while I can. We have to remember that Neil, Buzz, and Michael, when they did, within the 10 years that JFK promised, get to the moon, when when they finally were in that phase of their life, these weren't 20-year-old hotshots. These were guys who were, rapidly approaching what we call middle age. I mean, these were people who had better get strapped into that rocket now, because if you didn't, there wasn't a whole lot of career left as an astronaut. I mean, I know, thinking about it, probably 3 different astronauts who are, maybe done 3 missions, but they know they'll never fly again. They hit 50 years of age. It's kind of over, and they all wake up every morning still with that dream alive in their heads that they may get that telephone call and say, "Hey, we need you. Get back into training. We need to get you up there." But they won't happen. And they, on the other hand, have to keep that thought alive in their mind, because everything they stand for, everything they have achieved in their life, culminated in those missions into space. It's something you kind of do because you can do it, and you know that that's going to be taken away from you at some point. So my motivation is, while I can do it, you better get on with it. Mm-hmm. That won't be an option probably 10 or 15 years from now.
In researching your career over the last month, I noticed that you've gone through a good number of musicians over your career, and it's been a long career, so I mean, it's well justified, I suppose. But have you gone through musicians is it because you get sick of working with them, or is it because they just musically cannot perform or can't see your vision, or is it a combination of both?
Well, I think the way you're phrasing it, to go through musicians sounds as disparaging as if you said, "Well, I've gone through a number of girlfriends or wives." No, it's not a question of going through them. It is like a long and quite often passionate relationship between people that you enjoy and you value, and hopefully you keep that close to you for the rest of your life, even after you're no longer together. So I think of all the musicians I've worked with as being like a big extended family. They're all people that sadly 2 or 3 of them are no longer alive or functioning, but those that are, I'm happy to say that I have a good relationship with, and I speak to most of them on a fairly regular basis. It's something I do hold dear, but it's not a question of going through them and discarding them in some way. It's about things play their course, and sometimes people have become a member of the band for a limited engagement, which has been either mutually agreed or laid down by them, and I've been sad to see them go. That's happened on a few occasions where people say, "Well, I'm just here for finite period, and then I'm off to do something else." And you have to respect that they've got the rest of their lives to live, and sometimes they leave the band to do other things outside music, which I think is also probably quite a healthy pursuit. There are a few that have been pushed, not because of, well, maybe in 2 cases personal reasons, but that was then and this is now, and those couple of occasions, I think there are probably people that I'm been close to again for the last 2 or 3 decades. So no damage was really done. Yeah. But yes, you are in an intense relationship, and that's a working relationship, and you find there are people who are right for a certain thing for a certain time, but there's no point pretending that members of the band in the late 60s or early 70s could possibly have played on this record I've just made. Yeah. It's not to say they're not good enough, but their style, their way of doing things, it just wouldn't be within their reach to do it. And they wouldn't want to do it because they would be having to accept a lot of very specific arrangement ideas and musical ideas, which they probably say, "Well, that's just not what I do. I don't want to play that." You've got to have people who are excited to work with somebody who directs them, but gives them a degree of leeway and interpretation. But nonetheless, they've got to stick to the form. And sometimes I've made records where I've been very much restricted by people's way of playing, and looking back on it, I think, well, shame about that one, because there were great lyrics on that song, but unfortunately the way it turned out musically was not really that good. And it's not the fault of those people, it's just I don't think, you can expect people who have evolved a style within rock music to be necessarily as wide open and as musically expert as to play into other genres and other styles. You need a certain kind of musician who's very versatile and very, very, very well acquainted with a big, broad brush treatment of contemporary music. They've really got to understand and know a lot for it to be a workable relationship with me now, because not only have they got to play the new album, they've got to play everything, right from the year dot. They've got to know every kind of nuance, every element of the songs that we pick to do live on stage, and the best of Jethro Tull, which of course spans a lot of early years.
Yeah.
So it needs a very special kind of musician. I don't think previous editions of Jethro Tull could have coped with what we're doing in this show, for example.
Mm-hmm. What was that? One of your motivating factors behind going away from releasing records as Jethro Tull and releasing them as Ian Anderson?
Oh no! It's basically, there are, I suppose, two or three strands to that thought. One is that over the years, Jethro Tull has always been, for me, as a name, a bit of an embarrassment, because it was ripped off from a historical character by our agent back in February of 1968, who gave us the name. He was a history graduate, so he knew who Jethro Tull was. I, on the other hand, did not know. I thought it was a name he made up, and didn't quite grasp the importance of Jethro Tull, the historical character. And I've always felt embarrassed and awkward about trading under the identity of somebody else. Secondly, because of there being a huge repertoire of Jethro Tull music that I do like to separate out, particularly in live concerts, that if it just says Jethro Tull, then all you're going to get is, and people will expect to get, the best of Jethro Tull. These days I spell it out a little bit more, that I'm going to play the new album and the best of Jethro Tull, so people at least come to a concert knowing they're going to be subjected to some new music, which may not necessarily be their to their liking, in which case they may choose not to come. But I think it's important to tell people what it is they're going to get, and I use my own name much more to the fore, increasingly over the last 10, 15 years, because I am engaged more often on project kind of concerts and project kind of recordings. And I think to simply call it Jethro Tull would suggest that it somehow fits into that popular conception stylistically of, let us say, the period of Aqualung, and that would be wrong to give people that impression. So I think I would rather finish my career with under my own name, just because it seems a little more dignified, and I think explains rather better that I'm still engaged on new work as well as performing old repertoire.
Yeah, interesting. I agree with that philosophy, but some of your fans would love to see you get back together with Martin and do one more Jethro Tull release. And do you think?
Well, I'm sure they would, but that's not something that's on the cards at the moment. Martin has his own series of tours and concerts, and has just recorded some stuff, and I'm sure is working on new recordings. And I've always felt, over the years, I've always urged Martin to go out there and get on doing stuff, that it was important for him musically to do things outside of the music that I write. And I think maybe a combination of lack of confidence, maybe a little laziness, stopped him doing that to any real extent. And I think it's sometimes you've got to really push people into that state where they're really going to go and do things and prove to themselves and to others that they can actually do that in their own right. And I think it's important for Martin to have that time to do that now, not be just wrapped up again having to learn songs that I write and go out on tours over which he has no control. And because I do, of course, sometimes choose to do things that Martin doesn't want to do, go to countries he doesn't want to visit, and stay in hotels that he doesn't want to stay in. So it's, we have, obviously, as you get older, you get a little set in your ways, and he's not too keen on going to certain places. Although I noticed with interest that he is going to play in Russia. And a few years ago, when I had some Russian dates, he declined to come along because he didn't like the food. I think was the reason he gave. I'm personally very pleased that he's doing that for himself and indeed the fans who get to hear what it is he's doing. So, I think that's going to probably go on for a while.
Yeah, do you still have a good...
We're running out of time. We did run out of time, sorry. We're just 1 minute to go, and then I have to get on with the next one.
Okay, I have to ask you two quick questions then. The Metallica Grammy, when you won the Grammy Award over Metallica, how did you feel about that? And did you? I know that you didn't even go to the award ceremony because you didn't think you had a chance of winning, but how surprised?
Well, no, I didn't go to the award ceremony because the record company didn't think we had a chance of winning, and so they were unable to, felt that it was rather pointless in contributing to the cost of us going to Los Angeles. You know, we don't live on the west coast of America. We live, roughly speaking, 5,000 miles away, so it's an expensive and time-consuming trip to do that. So, and we were actually in the studio at the time working on a new album, so we didn't go because we weren't invited. But that's okay, and we didn't expect that we would win. I was very surprised we were nominated in the first place, especially in the category, which was a new one that year, for Best Hard Rock Oblique Stroke Metal Act. And we won, I think not because we were a heavy metal act or even a hard rock act. We won because we were a bunch of nice guys who hadn't won a Grammy before, and 5,000 odd voting members of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences decided in their voting wisdom that we should be given a Grammy. Since there isn't a category for Best One-Legged Flute Player, I just had to take what was on hand.
Would you ever
consider... we were pleased to get a Grammy, but as I said at the time, Metallica are obviously a hot new band, and with a major contribution to make, I'm sure they'll win the Grammy next year, which indeed they did.
Yeah. Would you ever consider collaborating with them and making the ultimate heavy metal song of all time?
Well, I've played actually with quite a few acts that you would call not heavy metal, but certainly hard rock, or even metal, or even thrash metal. So, yeah, I do from time to time do that sort of thing, because it's a challenge for me to work, especially as a flute player, to find a way to make that fragile little voice work in the context of the ultimate sort of aggressive, loud rock music, and so I've kind of had fun doing that with a number of acts that usually just playing on a record, but I think it's true to say that I've played on a few genuinely hard rock or metal albums, not necessarily by famous people, but the last one I played on, I think, was a few weeks ago for a young indie rock band in the USA called Jeff the Brotherhood.
Nice.
And I think they're somewhere around Nashville, or that part of the world, and they are, I guess, what you would call an indie rock metal kind of band. They're sort of they're pretty full-on distorted guitar kind of act. But again, as I say, it's a challenge to be finding a way to make to integrate my instrument into their music. And so that's why I did it, not because I knew who the hell they were, because I never heard of them before. They sent an email saying, I don't suppose you could possibly play on our record. But, sometimes I do.
That was very nice of you. My last question is, what do you think...
So, yeah, if Metallica got on the phone or sent me an email saying, can you play on this track? I would say, yes, but don't expect me to come to America to do it. You just send me a rough mix and tell me where you want me to play. Give me some vague verbal description of the kind of thing you're looking for, and let me loose, and I'll do it. I'll send it back to you, and if you like it, use it. If you don't, just delete the file. No charge, no expectation, no damage done. If you feel it doesn't fit, and it's on those terms that I've always played with other people. I've never accepted a fee or a royalty from playing on other people's records. It's something I only do because I want to do it, because it's a challenge, and because I'm pleased and honored to be asked.
Wow.
By musicians, whether they're famous or no one's ever heard of them before. But it means that I can say no. Yeah. I don't feel I'm doing it. I'm not prostituting myself. I'm not a musical hooker doing it for the cash. I don't give flute blowjobs.
Okay.
Anyway, on that witty but scurrilous note, I will have to say goodbye.
Okay.
And thank you very much for listening to me, and good luck writing this up or whatever you're doing. Fantastic.
Thank you, Ian.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.